All right, Mark, it's day 2. We gave up yesterday because we had to help Matt, but it's kind of a good thing because we're even more prepared today. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So you want to walk through what you got?
So I got a Diff that I got welded by Nico, and then I got a new oil pan, some oil,
RTV, Loctite
and
for the axle bolts, and then what's this giant box for?
so this giant box is a engine support bar that Dylan told us that we might need so it's less sketchy when
I
we're...
made him cash out because I was now about to risk my life with the engine hoist, holding this thing up and going under the car.
Yeah, this is gonna make me spend more money than I didn't need to spend.
But he did. But yeah, now we got the engine support brace. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna start on the hardest thing, which is replacing the lower oil pan because it's dented, and that's kind of a priority. This car does have a LSD, so worst case scenario, he'll just have to run the LSD, but more than likely we'll have the welded in.
Might be. What if I just drop it on the car? Where does it go? In between?
Yeah, that's probably good. All right, so we just got the engine all braced with the engine support bar. Now we're just gonna go ahead and start unbolting stuff, starting with everything attached to the subframe and dropping it. But Mark, are you ready?
Nope.
You're about to get really dirty, so here's a quick before of how he looked. Now, go ahead. All right, so I'm just gonna give a quick walkthrough of what Mark is gonna be doing because it's gonna be hard to get a camera under here since we didn't jack the car up high enough, but you guys could see here that the oil pan is pretty dented. We showed it yesterday before we went to go help Matt. So this is what we're gonna be working on replacing today. You guys could see all the bolts here that revolve around the oil pan and how the cross member here goes in the way of it, so we need to remove it, which is why we have the engine support brace up there. What Mark is going to do is he's going to undo these bolts for the cross member so he could lower it. But before he could undo the 4 bolts for the cross member, he needs to remove this triangle brace, which ties into the lower control arm here, and on the other side, and right here. And then after he gets that out, we could go ahead and start unbolting the subframe and just lowering it down. We're not going to remove it all the way. We're just going to lower it. And then to disconnect the subframe from the engine, if you look through these access holes, it doesn't want to come up. But there's 2 bolts in this one, or 2 nuts on this one. And on the other side, there's 2 more nuts. And after that, it'll be detached. So Mark, get to work. All right, so we got the subframe out. It was way more work than any of us thought. We thought the oil pan like barely overlaps it, so we just had to maybe unbolt this like brace right here, and then we could just like lower the subframe a little bit and get to the oil pan, but was that the case, Mark?
No.
All right, as you guys can see, it's a lot more chaotic here than we were expecting. What we thought we had to do was just unbolt the like triangle brace that connects from the subframe to the chassis and ties into the lower control arms, and then we could maybe unbolt the 4 bolts for the subframe and get it down enough to get to these back bolts. That was not the case. What we ended up having to do was, after we did all that, we had to unbolt the steering rack from the subframe so it wasn't tying it together because the steering column was holding everything up. Then we had to unbolt the lower control arm from the subframe to get that out of the way because it was binding on both sides. And then we had to unbolt the strut from the lower control arm so it could drop out of the way. And what we ended up doing is we put the corners on jack stands so they're balanced, and now everything is kind of just floating. We also had to disconnect the sway bar from the lower control arm and also the headlight level sensor, and also this rear control arm, just so that everything could get out of the way to clear the subframe so it could come out. And when we were taking the subframe out, we noticed that both of Mark's motor mounts are torn. So now we got to figure out if we're just going to run it or if we could find new ones or what we're going to do. But How do you feel about all the discoveries we made?
Everything's broken.
Yep, 250,000 mile Lexus.
Still runs.
Yeah, so now we're just gonna go to the store, get some Scotch-Brite because we forgot to get some so we could clean the mating surface for the oil pan and the diff cover, and then we're gonna RTV it and keep going. Me and Mark just got back from Home Depot where we got some Scotch-Brite so we could finally pull the oil pan off and then clean the upper oil pan on the car before we put some RTV on the new lower pan to put it back on. But what Mark is doing right now is he's draining the oil from the motor because we didn't do that yet, and then we'll pull the pan off. And then while we're RTVing the oil pan, we'll also pull the cover off of the diff, clean the mating surfaces with the Scotch-Brite, and then RTV that too. And everything should hopefully go smooth from there, but we'll see because nothing ever goes smooth. But yeah, while we were doing all of that, we went to Home Depot and I saw my tire pressure light come on, which I kind of ignored. And I popped my back tire on my only working car right now, so that's cool. Alright, we got the pan off. Mark's about to go clean it with the Scotch-Brite. And while he's doing that, Guillermo showed up and he's going to start on the diff by draining it for him so we could hopefully make the event, because the event, it's about to be Mark's first stretch event in like a few days, and this is very last minute, and we also have to prep Matthias and everyone else.
Yeah, literally.
So thank you, Guillermo, for helping.
Gonna be doing this in the next 10 minutes.
Yep. So Guillermo's going to start draining the diff that's in the car and start unbolting everything, and then Mark is just going to start becoming the cleaning lady.
Move this shit out.
Nope, you just got to scrub.
Is it clean yet?
Alright, so Mark finished cleaning the upper oil pan and got it all ready for the RTV and the new pan. Now we're just going to go ahead and prep the diff by taking the cover off, cleaning it just like we did to the upper pan. And then we're going to go ahead and throw some RTV on this, throw some RTV on this pan, and then throw them all together. So we're only using a little bit of RTV for both instead of wasting more, right? Take the cover off. So here is the diff that Nico welded for Mark. As you guys can see, he plate welded it, so it's plenty strong. And yeah, now Mark has an automatic gear ratio, so it's a 3.9 instead of a 3.7 welded diff instead of the LSD. So Mark just finished cleaning the housing of the diff for the RTV, and I just finished cleaning the cover. So now we're gonna go ahead and throw some RTV on here and then seal it up. And while we're doing that, we're gonna go ahead and throw some RTV on the pan. And Guillermo is still pulling all the bolts off for the axle so we can get the old diff out. But yeah, now we're just gonna go ahead and start RTVing. There you go. Piece of advice: if you're ever taking a drive shaft off of a 240 or a IS or something, don't take it all the way out because it'll leak fluid out of the trans. We learned the hard way. Alright, so now it's day 3. We had to stop yesterday because we had a problem getting the diff out, and we think we came up with a solution today. And also, Mark's motor mounts, as you guys seen, was torn, so we went up and got some from our friend Riku. And now, Mark, are you gonna finish today while I get my driveway back?
Hopefully.
So me and Mark went into grind mode, so we stopped recording for a little bit, but we didn't make that much progress. Raymond came and helped, and thankfully he did, because without him we wouldn't be making progress. But we did get the rear diff cover bolts out, which are these Allen bolts over here. What we had to do was really sketchy. We ended up, since the spare tire well is like right over behind the diff cover, we couldn't fit the ratchet with the socket to get it out, so we ended up using a 12 mil wrench on the socket in the front of it, and then using a giant attachment with a breaker bar to break that loose. And afterwards, me and Raymond did something really sketchy to get the engine mount off, because on this side, it's really hard to gain access to right over there. So what we ended up doing is we put a wrench on it, and because we didn't have that much leverage, we used a breaker bar, an extension, and this attachment that attaches to wrenches, and it was very sketchy. How was it, Raymond?
It's fucking terrible.
What do you mean?
And it's hot down there.
And basically the second Raymond showed up, I just shoved tools in his face and made him do it. But yeah, now we're gonna finish this thing up. Raymond's probably gonna do something, and then we'll keep going. But yeah, right now we're just gonna put the new motor mounts on and continue wrapping all this up. All right, and then here are the motor mounts that came out of Mark's car. As you guys can see, they're in multiple pieces when they should be one piece. And then here are the motor mounts we got from Riku. They are used, but they're a lot better than what we're working with, so we're just gonna run it, right?
Oh, fuck.
Alright, so we got a little bit of a dilemma. We tried swapping the stubs from the LSD onto the open diff because we were told by another aimless member that sold the diff to Mark that they are interchangeable, but the stubs are just getting stuck in the open or welded diff, and it seems like they're not interchangeable. Now the LSD stub is stuck in here, so we can't even revert back. So while we're trying to figure all this out, Mark is just going to continue putting everything back together here, starting with the cross member, which is the big chunky boy right here. And that's just the 4 giant nuts that hold it in place, and after that we're going to tie all the suspension back together. But for now, me and Raymond are going to try to figure this diff stuff out, where it'll be hurting our head. I finally got the stubs out of the welded diff. They were stuck in, we had to bash it, and we pretty much ended up bending the dust shield on the side of the stubs to get it out. I was able to bend it back straightish enough, and we're just gonna go ahead and put the LSD back in so Mark could drive the event, because we do not have time to try to find another diff or stubs to get back in the car. But yeah, Mark and Raymond right now are under the car bolting the cross member back into it, and we had to do some like fuckery to line the motor mounts back in with the subframe, but it's going smoothly. We're trying to speed run this because Mark wants to go home and walk his dog. But
I love my dog.
Raymond is helping him. Let's see how long this takes. They're just basically gonna revert everything that we just did, which is just bolting the subframe, attaching the lower arm, attaching the strut back to it, and the brace, and then we'll move on to putting his stock diff back on. Alright, so Mark just finished wrapping up everything for the front suspension. It was pretty easy. We just had to attach all the arms back onto the subframe. But yeah, we're all done for the front end. Now all we have to do is figure out what we're doing with the diffs, because we have now the LSD. We did manage to get the stub that was stuck in the open diff out and back into it. So now we're debating if we're going to throw the LSD back in or try to find another open diff last second to take the stubs out and throw it into this, or what we're doing. But yeah, the front's all done. Now all we have to do is take this support brace off, and then I guess just contemplate and try to find a diff, right? Or are we gonna put the LSD in?
I want diff.
And then you can take that off. Just pull it off. Yeah. What do you think, Raymond?
It shows an hour drive, and it could have been like 20 minutes.
But yeah, Carl plugged us. He let us get some stubs he had laying around. We don't know if they'll work yet because he doesn't know if they're from an LSD or an open diff, but we figured it's worth a try putting it in that before we commit to just pulling the LSD back in, because we don't want to do that. Oh, I'm going to confirm our suspicion that there is a difference between the open diff stubs and the LSD stubs, because you can see here we have the open diff with no stubs. We have the LSD, and on this side, I took the stub out. And now I'm just going to grab one of the stubs from Carl, which he doesn't know if it's from an open diff or an LSD. And you can see that.
Why'd you need to hammer it in there?
It doesn't go in, right? And now I'm gonna take the same stub, which I don't believe are directional, they look the same, and I'm gonna try it on the LSD. Right? Turn it on its side. And it goes right in. Guillermo showed up and basically he was like, nah, I'm not gonna be defeated that I got the wrong diff for Mark. So he got the stub, put it in, got a big ass sledgehammer, went to town and got it in. So I guess maybe it does work. So take everything I said with a grain of salt, do your own research. But we got the LSD stub into the open diff, so maybe there isn't a difference. You just had to keep bashing it. And yeah, looks like it works.
Here, I can show you guys the other side just so you guys can see.
So you guys can see it's seated.
It's seated in there.
And then bash the other side so they could see what's involved to get the LSD stub onto the open. It might not be a stub issue. It might be because we got it welded without the stubs in it that it warped the spider gears a little bit. So the stubs have a difficult time going in, which is why whenever you're supposed to weld a diff, you're supposed to have the stubs in it, but we didn't have that luxury and we're making it work.
So you get the extension, preferably one that you don't give a fuck about. Then you hammer that bitch.
With the biggest sledgehammer you have. For me, that's a 3-pound Milwaukee. There, now it might be in. The tone
You just
changed.
seated.
Yeah. Surprise Mark by so Mark was like, oh, if you guys can't figure out the welded diff, just put the LSD in and I guess we don't have to break it in or anything. We ended up getting the welded diff to work because of Guillermo and Lewis because of his tips and everything. And yeah, we were gonna go surprise Mark, and then we realized even though Mark reminded us because we did this before, none of us torqued the wheels. So as you guys can see, the hazards are on. We're cruising on the freeway during construction when there's no shoulder for us to go on.
All the exits are closed.
All the exits are closed. The wheels sound like they're about to fucking fall off. Like, this is the most stressful moment that we have experienced. This is crazy. So Mark, if your wheel falls off, we're sorry. We kind of dropped it off jacks and got excited and started driving, and we realized once we got on the freeway and all the exits are closed that no one tightened the wheels. So hopefully we can make it back to my house and we can tighten the wheels, and then we'll meet you at In-N-Out where you're gonna buy us all food late. It was the back that was clunking hella bad.
Yeah.
Okay. That was about to fly off. There's no way. You can see this?
Yeah, you would have been
That
on
was
the ground.
hand tight. Look at this.
Bruh.
This is the side you put on. Okay, that sounds way better.
Wait, move around like you were when you were on
It's
the
not
freeway?
clunking anymore. Okay, yeah, it's not
Wow.
clunking anymore. This shit was, it was already by now, I would have heard do 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 do. Go, bitch. Why you still moving?
Realize he's not gonna be on your side. He's gonna be on my side. Oh no, he's gonna be on your side. You're right. Oh, you're wrong.
You hear it?
It's an LSD.
You hear that shit?
Yeah.
I did that shit. You hear it?
The stubs work?
Yeah.
You just had to smack them in hella hard.
Yeah, I
Which
used
ones?
the.
Wait,
Oh, we got some from Carl.
What?
Stubs.
Yeah.
The stubs from Carl work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, send him 400.
No,
Both
he didn't even say a
LSDs.
price, honestly.
No, so yours would have worked too.
So you know how Nico welded it without the stubs in it?
Uh-huh.
It warped the carrier a little bit. So we had to push the stubs in hella hard and then they went in.
What?
Say
What?
thank you,
Hey, you raised it?
Lewis.
So
The coilovers are seized. I did whatever I could.
Alright.
I went crazy.
So
What?
So now you're good to drift.
So-
I guess he wasn't wrong.
I
Yeah,
wasn't wrong.
No, he was.
I was not wrong.
he wasn't.
I got
But
some food.
yeah,
I never wrong.
so
What's that?
we're gonna put miles on it and change the fluid.
Yeah.
When?
You have
Right
to
now?
right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
For the diff.
What do you think, Mark?
I'm not selling the car no more.
I thought I should show a closer view just so you guys can see and get a better understanding. If you guys look closely, there is chunks of like slag, which are the circles when you weld that like splatter throughout the diff that came off, but also a lot of like sharp chunks. That's just from breaking it in. And yeah, remember to change your fluid. All right, Mark, what do you think?
You guys made it happen.
Yeah.
You guys made what I thought that wasn't possible possible.
Yeah,
So shout out to you,
Guillermo.
and Raymond, because I was so close to just listing this car on Facebook. I was about to give up.
yeah. Me and Raymond literally looked at each other and we were like, where the fuck did he go? Me and Raymond literally looked at each other and we were like, nah, we got this. And then we were about to put the LSD in, but then we like stared at each other for a couple hours and decided to keep trying. Then Guillermo showed up and we got the stubs in and kept going. But how do you think you're gonna drive this weekend?
Terrible.
Yeah, it'll be documented though, so we'll see how it goes in the next couple videos. All right, bye.